right, guys. Hey, as you know, this summer at FloWrestling, we're trying to figure out the best NCAA wrestler of the last 25 years at all 10 NCAA weight classes. This week, we're in Fargo, and it's 174 pounds. So we're going to get into it. But first, before we break down the finalists and how we arrived at our conclusion, you got to remember, this is how we decided the team. First, we posed the question to everybody on our FloWrestling staff: who would you rank as the top 4 174-pounders of the last 25 years? We ranked all those guys. Then we put it to you guys, the fans, because we knew we wanted you to have a vote as well. The votes are in, and now we can reveal the top 174-pounders of the last 25 years. All right, before we get into the top 4 174-pounders of the last 25 years, we got to mention a few guys who didn't even make the cut that are still really, really good. And first on that list is Josh Koscheck. Koscheck for Edinburgh, he was their first ever 4-time All-American, which, I mean, that's an incredible thing to do for that program. You guys already know he went on to have an incredible MMA career, but ultra dominant in his NCAA title season for the Fighting Scotsman. And, you know, we gotta put him on the list. Josh Koscheck, awesome guy, didn't quite make the top 4. Another guy that didn't make the cut, but we absolutely have to mention here, is Keith Gavin, the current head coach for the Pitt Panthers. Keith Gavin went into his college career as a fairly unheralded wrestler. He didn't win a state title in Pennsylvania. Even going into his junior year, he was unranked, but he went on to make the NCAA finals where he lost to Ben Askren. His senior year, an undefeated NCAA title season. Keith Gavin went on to have a bunch of senior level success. He was a senior level world team member for Team USA, now the head coach at Pitt. Keith Gavin, you got to give your hats off to that guy. The next guy we have to mention is Steve Luke, a Michigan Wolverine. This guy actually lost to Keith Gavin in the NCAA finals, but then went on to have an undefeated senior season. He was a 3-time Big Ten champ, and Steve Luke, an absolute monster for the Wolverines. The next guy we've got to talk about is an Iowa Hawkeye who only had 3 years of eligibility to compete. He was part of that Tom Brand's transition from Virginia Tech to Iowa. It's Jay Borschel. Borschel got those 3 seasons. He only had 10 losses. He had almost 100 wins in his career. His senior season, he ended up with a 37-0 record, and he won an NCAA title. He had a crazy tournament. He had to come from behind in the semis. And then in the NCAA finals, he beat Mac Lunas, who was a guy that was not only undefeated, but hadn't given up a takedown all year long. Jay Borschel, just an incredible 174-pounder in this last 25 years. This list would not be complete without talking about the gladiator, John Reeder, for Iowa State. He went into his first 2 years for the Cyclones. He was an All-American, looked awesome, and then somehow fell a little bit short as a junior. He doubled down on his efforts. He came back, and as a senior, he was an undefeated NCAA champ with a whole bunch of bonus points. John Reeder was just an absolute dominator as a senior, and that's why we got to at least mention him as one of the best 174-pounders in the last 25 years. Oklahoma State's Chris Perry was just 1 match away from reaching All-American status as a freshman at 184. What did he do after he didn't place as a freshman? He cut down to 174 pounds, where he went 96-4 in his final 3 seasons at 174 pounds. A 2-time NCAA champion. Chris Perry, man, huge difference maker, and what a gamer for the Cowboys. Mark Hall, true freshman year, he was in redshirt, went to the Southern Scuffle, didn't even have a singlet to wear, had to borrow one from another kid. He ended up going on to win that tournament and win the NCAA title as a true freshman, where he beat Zahid Valencia in the semifinals. I mean, this guy ended up being a 3-time NCAA finalist for Penn State. And by the way, he didn't even get a chance to compete in his final season because COVID-19 canceled the whole tournament. But guess what? Mark Hall was the number 1 seed going into his final NCAA tournament. We didn't get to find out where he would have finished, but what we do know, incredible career for Mark Hall. This guy, one of the best to do it. That brings us to our last 4 at 174 pounds. And we're going to go in chronological order, like we've been doing all series long. And the first guy that we have to mention is Chris Pendleton for Oklahoma State. Pendleton got kind of pulled out of redshirt as a true freshman, ended up not placing. Then after a redshirt year, came back and was just an unbelievable difference maker for the Cowboys. Pendleton, a 2-time NCAA champion who helped the Cowboys win 3 team titles. And what he's largely known for is his dominant series against Ben Askren. And Askren's spoiler alert, a guy we're going to talk about in just a second, but Pendleton, just an incredible career for Oklahoma State. His record at 174 was 100 wins to just 4 losses. This guy absolutely deserves to be in that top 4, and what an incredible career. He's doing great things as the head coach at Oregon State now, but Chris Pendleton, great career for the Cowboys. The next finalist at 174 pounds is Ben Askren. This guy went to Missouri, which at the time was a program nobody was talking about. They hadn't done a whole lot of things, and now they're a perennial powerhouse program in the NCAA, and that's because of Ben Askren. He was a 4-time NCAA finalist, a 2-time NCAA champ, and a 2-time Hodge Trophy winner, meaning he was the most dominant wrestler in all of college wrestling for his last 2 seasons. Ben Askren was 87-0 in his junior and senior years. He had 91 pins in his career, and his legacy lives on at Missouri. Ben Askren was also an innovator. He changed the way that a lot of people think about wrestling and about coaching wrestling. His scrambling, the ways that he could score from positions where other people weren't at the time was really what separates him and makes him just a next level 174 pounder in the last 25 years. Our next finalist was an Arizona State Sun Devil and is a current member of Team USA at 86 kilos. It's 2-time NCAA champion, Zahid Valencia, and Valencia was a big-time recruit coming out of high school, was really the pillar of the recruiting class that Arizona State brought in 2015. He was a 2-time champ, and that was only in 3 attempts. The other attempt that he had, he lost in the semifinals to Mark Hall on a headgear pull. If not for that, who knows? Maybe he would have won 3. He didn't know he won 2. And still, Zahid Valencia, just an absolutely incredible career for the Sun Devils at 174. The last finalist we have to talk about at 174 pounds is Carter Starachi from Penn State, the only ever 5-time NCAA champion. And he did 4 of those at 174 pounds. Starachi lost a couple matches as a freshman, but after that, the only matches he lost were injury defaults. The guy only had 4 losses in his career. The guy only had 4 losses in his entire career, and 2 of those were by injury default. Starachi, the 5-time champ, that puts him in a strata that's probably never going to be matched again, because that extra year, that's just something that's not going to be afforded to other wrestlers. Starachi was 103-4 officially on his record in his career, but remember, 2 of those were injury default losses. And oh, by the way, what did Starachi do after those 2 injury default losses at the Big Ten tournament? He turned around and won an NCAA title on an injured leg, beating 2 NCAA champs just to make it to the finals. Carter Starachi, absolutely one of the best to ever do it at 174 pounds. Here's how the votes played out at 174 pounds. We're going to let you know from 4th to 1st how our team voted and how you guys voted. And before I reveal the results of these top 4, I should explain. Almost every week we have 7, 8, 9 guys receiving votes to be in that top 4 from people on our team. Guess what? At 174, there were only 4 guys that received votes. It was these 4. It was Starachi, it was Zahid, it was Askren, and it was Pendleton. Those were the only guys that anybody on our team put in the top 4. So just to make it into that category is already pretty incredible. But we got to get into it. We got to let you know how did the votes land. And starting in 4th place, it was Zahid Valencia. Hard to believe, given that this is a guy that just took out Kyle Dake at Final X, and we've seen how incredible his career is. But it was Zahid Valencia finishing in 4th place at 174. Definitely still a huge notch in his belt because, man, this is a weight class full of absolute monsters. The 3rd place finisher at 174 pounds is actually a guy that coached Zahid Valencia for a while and now is the head coach at Oregon State. You've put it together. It's Chris Pendleton. He finished in 3rd based on the voting, and that might sound a little odd because he did really own that series that he had against Ben Askren. But I think looking at the full picture of the career, people weighed Askren and Starachi a little bit higher. So it was Chris Pendleton finishing in 3rd, an unbelievable, remarkable career for Oklahoma State. And now he's doing incredible things. Just look at what Oregon State is doing on a year-to-year basis. That brings us to the final 2. And like last week was the first time that we had a fan vote decide who was going to win the all-quarter century team, and that was at 165. This week at 174, it was the same thing. It was really close, and I think when people were trying to weigh the difference, they were looking at the history of Starachi and the innovation and the dominance of Askren. the 2 Hodge trophies of Askren, and just the unprecedented 5 titles of Storace. And here's what it came down to. It came down to you guys, the fans, and in second place was Funky Ben Askren. Askren finished in second despite 4 NCAA finals appearances, 2 Hodge trophies, 2 NCAA titles, and just an awesome, awesome career. He went on to have so much success in MMA, and Ben Askren, your second team all quarter century member at 174. So you put it together by now, all quarter century, 174 pounds. It's Carter Storace. He's the only ever 5-time NCAA champ. Just the 2 losses in contested matches. Unbelievable career. Carter Storace is going to take it home at 174 for Penn State. All right, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. And next week, we got to look at 184 pounds. Man, what another loaded weight class in the last 25 years. Keep it locked all summer long to FloWrestling. We got Fargo going on the rest of the week. We've got so much stuff to look forward to. U17, U20, Senior World Championships, all just around the corner. Keep it locked on FloWrestling all summer long.